And then Nightbling, you are wondering about the feeling about possibility of one of the 3 trees of Warden getting replaced by a passive tree, like the Brawler and now Minstrel, where it is supplemental traits. So for Warden, really for any class, that would be an interesting conversation. I don't think it necessarily should happen to every single class in the game. I have no idea how I was targeting that toad. For the Warden, it'd be a little bit interesting to look at which trait tree would get taken away. We'll start with the odd one. Say it was the blue line, because that is perhaps the least viable Warden spec right now. Say they got rid of the blue line and just made it supplemental traits. That actually could be a good thing for tanking, which might sound odd at first. They'd have to do a little bit of extra revampy stuff with the class, but that's something I could almost be in favor of, because that way, yeah, tanking could just be a part of the Warden, and depending on which stance you're in, you could do more DPS oriented stuff or more tanking stuff. For example, they could have a tank stance, and maybe in the yellow line, you would have more range oriented stuff. You could maybe do some range tanking, something like that even. And then in the red line, you could get basically the regular melee DPS that it is now. So those two would stay fairly similar, but as far as how they would have tanking integrated into them. Thing with the blue line traits is they could be survivability boosted. So a problem that with that is that it could just be like, if you're wanting to tank on your Warden, you just take all the blue line traits. So maybe building would be not all too interesting with them if they did that. But it was just something I was thinking about with the Warden in particular, because that way, whether you're red or yellow line, you would have the ability to tank. It would almost take the class, while you can DPS, back to its roots, where tanking is a more core part of the class, even though you could just go regular DPS. I would hope that if that were the case, DPS would be viable, and basically as it is right now. But overall, I don't think that one would go too well, despite me thinking that some elements of it could be exciting. As far as getting rid of red line, I really don't see that happening. The one I could see them doing, maybe other than the blue line, is the yellow line, and integrating all the range stuff into the class, kind of like integrating the tank stuff, integrate the range stuff, and just have these be supplemental traits for either red or blue Warden. Maybe orient the red to be a little bit more ranged and have some of the ranged elements of a yellow line Warden. They could keep traits like Seize the Moment, which is one of my favorite traits in the entire game. They could keep that as like a capstone yellow line trait to give value into going into yellow line. I don't know about barbed javelins, but some of the more support oriented stuff, I really never feel like the Warden's meant to be a support class. That's why I feel odd about half of the yellow line stuff that's like support oriented. To me, they just never really felt like a debuffer, even before the whole trait tree thing, back when I was my earlier days playing the game. So, but yeah, overall, if they got rid of a trait line for the Warden and made it passive, just supplemental traits, it would really depend how they implement it, and I would almost be in favor of them removing support stuff from the yellow line, even though that's like half the point of the yellow line. Yeah, some of the thinking about, I didn't look at this with the blue line, but thinking about these set bonuses, a lot of them could be either integrated into traits or just made into the class. Things like Snapshot, I suppose that could be a trait, but the problem is there's relatively little utility out of Snapshot. The biggest one would be Ambush and Hampering Javelin, I believe. Javelin of Deadly Force it used to be an exciting skill, but nowadays it just isn't. And yeah, with the changes to the Minstrel, it does seem like they might do that with other classes. I think I did see a dev post that they weren't necessarily considering it for every class, but it seems entirely possible that they would. Jimmy, you said you're about to go back to leveling your Warden. You're split between yellow or red line. Both are great. I would guess it depends what level you are. In my experience, after level 85, the yellow line is definitely worth considering over the red line. But before level 85, you might not see as much benefit out of the yellow line. So there are a couple important things, actually 3 important things for the yellow line. And the first is barbed javelins, which gives your Javelin Gambits a chance to give a bleed. So if I just do Piercing Toss here, which normally doesn't give a bleed, it has a chance to. That time it didn't have a bleed, so there's some RNG there. And that's why at very low levels, even when you can get that trait, I don't necessarily recommend it because it's inconsistent. And then for, say, a little bit higher levels, you can get this trait, Seize the Moment. When you have a crit, you have a chance to reset your Gambit Mastery cooldowns and remove their cooldowns. So you can spam your Gambit Masteries while building Gambits really fast. So to me, that's really fun, and it is actually useful in combat to build Gambits a whole lot faster. So that's another thing the yellow line offers. And then at higher levels, something that's not unique to the yellow line is the Range Resounding Challenge trait, which is made better just by being in the yellow line, which focuses more on range stuff. So this, I said trait, but I meant Gambit. Range Resounding Challenge is 3-2-3-1 range Gambit. And it just does a lot of damage. It can basically kill regular mobs on its own, given enough time for the damage over time to tick a little bit. Can I blame the cat for distracting me? Alright then. See, that's the benefit of Seize the Moment and Range Resounding Challenge right there. Oh, and a level up to top it off. That's perfect. Ah, the Dordons. I am excited for the Dordons. That is definitely true. Maybe they'll have a class revamp just in time for them. Yeah, Warden has a lot going for it that makes it my favorite class. I actually finally... I know I've talked about the big leveling guide that I just did a lot, which, by the way, has been performing actually surprisingly well for my channel. I'll get to that in a moment, but I am finally planning on getting to another Warden guide, and one where I actually go through the traits. So I kind of had this revelation when I was going through the big leveling guide and editing it. I was thinking about how I could do a Warden guide, or not a Warden guide, but do my class guides. Y'all might remember I used to have like videos where I would go through every single trait and that type of stuff. It kind of annoyed me. I know viewers liked it, but it was something that always bothered me, how just like slow paced it was, and it took forever to get through it. And then I'd show gameplay, but not virtue traits for some reason, even though it was already such a long video. And what I have kind of decided, it almost goes back to the Hunter one I did. I did a video sort of like this on the Hunter, but kind of just go through basic stuff. But a way to format it is like Warden leveling guide is what it will be, rather than trait build guide. Even though it will cover all that stuff, that's just the framing for it. So that is something that I've had a little bit of a breakthrough. It might sound silly, but it has been something that I've wanted to get back to those videos. I even recorded one for the Minstrel. It might even have been a year ago or more than a year ago. I think it was June 2021. So I recorded a guide for the Minstrel that was a perfectly fine recording, I think. But I just really hated the format of it. It was like those old trait build guides that I did. So I think I finally have a fix for me to do those videos again.